So, in regards to protecting people from harm, the goal that the researcher should have is to make sure that they're not causing any undue physical or emotional stress, right? So, you want to make sure that you're not doing things that are going to create undue stress on your participants. And, some studies, participants might learn things about themselves that they didn't really want to know about. So, going back to the Milgram's study example, those participants were oftentimes very shocked that they were willing to, go to that degree in which they would harm someone else. So that might be a very emotionally stressful context. Or, if they were deceived, they might feel bad that they were duped by the experimenters. They might feel bad in regards to that. So you want to make sure you're protecting people from undue harm. Second, you want to make sure that they have the freedom of choice, right? So the participants should have the right to uh, decide whether they want to be in the study and if they want to withdraw, right? So the informed consent allows participants to decide whether or not they want to participate in the study. So they need to have enough information to make an informed decision about whether they want to participate. And then it needs to be clearly stated that they have the right to withdraw from the study at any point without penalty. So if they were promised to get $20 for being in your study and they get through half of it and realize this is something that they're uncomfortable with, they can stop and still get the $20. So in an informed consent, you want to just tell a number of things. I'm going to point out a few of them. You want to describe the procedures of the study and any potential risks that are involved. So if there is any kind of physical, psychological, emotional risk, they need to know that ahead of time so they can decide whether they want to participate. It needs to reinforce the voluntary nature of the experiment. So again, they can withdraw at any time without penalty. There should be discussions about anonymity and confidentiality. So is it anonymous? And if it's not, how are you going to make sure that the participant's name is not linked back to their responses? You want to keep those things separate, and you want to describe how you're going to keep those things separate. So there's a couple things you want to think about as you're creating your consent form. The third component is the balance of power, right? So inherently in an experiment, the experimenter has more power than the participant. And again, the Tuskegee studies are a good example of where the experimenter typically has more power and as a result might abuse that power. So what you want to try to do is to minimize that power as much as possible. And I think by giving the participants the right to withdraw without penalty is one way to ensure that the participants don't feel like they have to continue just so they can get whatever compensation that they were offered. Um, Also, you want to make sure that the participants know that they can report any wrongdoing by the experimenter to the institutional review board. We'll talk about them in a minute. By having that board there, that board will then, if something inappropriate does happen, they have the ability to penalize the experimenter and stop the study. And then you want to make sure that you're honestly describing the nature of your research. So you want to give a relatively accurate depiction of your study in the consent form. Maybe you don't go into all the specifics, but you want to give them a general overview. If at some point there is deception involved, you want to make sure that by the end of the study that you explain what this deception was and the importance of using that deception and making sure that the participants know that whatever they were told was not accurate. And that information typically is presented in what's called a debriefing form. This is where you're stating the purpose of the study, giving them more context for what they did, and if there was deception, that deception is clarified and corrected for the participants. So, the challenge here is to figure out ways in which you can conduct your research so that you can get people to act naturally by reducing demand characteristics, but while still protecting the rights of your participants. And as I mentioned a minute ago, the Institutional Review Board is a committee that evaluates research projects that use human participants or animals. And any institution that receives government funding has to have an institutional review board. So all of the CUNY schools, almost any university, they all get federal funding. As a result, they have to have this board that ensures that people's rights are protected. And the board will consist of um, researchers, administrators, people from the community. So it's a wide range of individuals. And again, their goal is to um, protect the rights of the participants. And they do this by um, doing a risk benefit analysis. So they're trying to gauge what are the benefits of this particular project, and do those benefits outweigh the potential risks? If they do, and it's clear that the researchers have minimized any risks, then typically that particular proposal will get approved. But if the risks outweigh the rewards, um, they'll be denied and asked to revise their particular proposal so that it either minimizes the risks or maximizes the benefit, ideally both. So let's go back to the bathroom study. If you were a member of John Jay's IRB, um, and someone came to you and proposed this bathroom study, what would you suggest that they do to make the study more ethical? Like, what would you do to try to maximize the benefits while minimizing the risks? Because in the end, that's your goal, is to make sure that the risks of the participants are minimal, but the maximizing of the benefits to the experimenter are maximal. I would just suggest, ideally find a less invasive way to do this study. Find a different context that does not involve the bathroom. If it must be in the bathroom, make sure that there's a debriefing at the end so the participants have the right to withdraw and they know that they were in a study, right? I think that's very important. And then obviously the person who's recording how long it takes the participant to urinate, they can't directly be looking at the participant, they can only be listening. And then definitely have some plan in case the participant gets upset. Maybe you have someone there that can kind of calm down any upset feelings, just so that no one ends up getting hurt. So in review, the goal for the researcher is to be able to get people's natural responses, um, but at the same time, they need to make sure that they don't violate the rights of the participants. And ethics is trying to balance the goals of the participants with the goals of the experimenters. And the Institutional Review Board weighs the costs and benefits of a study before they're conducted. And again, the goal being to maximize benefits, minimize the risks.